I started my night shift as a nurse a few months ago. I was eager to pay off my student loans, but I hadn't thought much about the haunting atmosphere of the hospital. It was old, with flickering lights and long, echoing hallways. The silence weighed down on me as I moved through the quiet wards. On my third night, I checked a patient's chart for the third time. I was sure the medications were correct since I had just seen him earlier. My heart sank when I saw that the details had changed. I thought maybe I was too tired, but unease crept in. I told myself, it must be my imagination. As the night dragged on, whispers floated from the staff lounge. I felt the hair on my neck stand up. I glanced around, convinced I'd find someone there. The room was dark, but I stepped inside. I flicked the light switch and watched the bulb flicker on. My heart raced when I saw old photographs pinned to the wall. The faces looked familiar, some were former nurses and doctors I believed I had seen walking the halls. I stepped closer, feeling like their eyes followed me. I shivered and hurried out. I thought maybe I was just exhausted. The next night, I noticed something strange. A patient sat in one of the rooms but wasn't on my roster. I watched her from a distance. She looked pale and unresponsive. My heart raced as I rushed to check her chart. There was no record in the system. I turned back, and the room was empty. A chill shot through me. Was I hallucinating? I questioned my own mind. These odd occurrences wouldn't leave me alone. It felt like they were trying to tell me something important. I often found myself in the silence of the night, thinking about the whispers, the photos, and the strange patients. I kept returning to that lounge, staring at those photographs. One night, a thought struck me. What if those faces were a warning? I turned to look at the wall again and felt my breath catch. One photo was facing down. I knew I had seen that woman before. Fear gripped my chest as I stared at the name tag. It couldn't be. The next night, things got worse. I was restocking supplies when I heard the whispers again. This time, they sounded urgent. I hurried to the lounge, but it was empty. I felt a cold wind rush through the room. I shivered, and my gut twisted with dread. Why was the lounge colder than the rest of the hospital? I headed back to my station. The air felt thick, and shadows danced at the edges of my vision. I realized I was all alone with those strange occurrences. My heart pounded as I thought of that photograph. What did those faces want from me? I often found myself at the edge of panic, questioning if I was imagining all this. Each night was a new struggle, filled with whispers, empty rooms, and flickering lights. I couldn't escape it. I didn't want to think what those things meant or what might happen if I kept ignoring them. Something about that hospital felt alive. And I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. I walked into the hospital that night, the weight of all the recent events pressing heavily on my shoulders. Each creak of the building seemed to echo my own anxious thoughts. I had come to expect the whispers, but I felt more uneasy than ever. Something about the air felt electric, as if I was on the verge of discovery or danger. I made my rounds, checking on patients while fighting a growing sense of dread. The unexplained sounds followed me, teasing me from the corners of rooms, whispering my name in a voice barely audible. I felt their shadows lurking, watching me, waiting for something. I couldn't figure out what they wanted, but my skin crawled with fear. In the quiet of the early morning, I stepped into the staff lounge again. The photographs still hung on the wall, some with their former owners lost in the passage of time. Their expressions seemed to have shifted when I wasn't looking. But one particular photo caught my eye, a family portrait. In it, the woman's eyes bore an unsettling recognition. I had seen her before, not just in the photos but during my shifts. The realization sent shivers down my spine. Before I could think of searching further, I heard a loud crash from down the hall. My heart raced with a mix of dread and curiosity as I dashed towards the sound. I had to know what it was. As I approached the source, the light flickered erratically, casting odd shapes on the walls. The hallway felt unnaturally cold, and the air thickened as if it held its breath. In a patient's room, I found the source of the noise. A metal tray had fallen to the ground. I glanced at the patient inside and froze. The bed was empty. My breath hitched as I realized she was the same woman from the photo. Confusion enveloped me, as a rush of cold air swept past, sending goosebumps across my skin. I backed out of the room slowly, clinging to the doorframe like it was my last anchor. Then everything changed. The light in the hallway blinked out, plunging me into darkness. Panic flared, and I scrambled for the emergency lights, my hands trembling. I felt like something was watching me, a presence lurking just out of sight. The whispers grew louder, surrounding me, filling my mind with their intentions. They urged me to leave, but I resisted. I had to understand what was happening. I felt the cold breath of a draft brush against my neck, and suddenly, I wasn't alone. I turned, and there she stood, the woman from the photographs, although her smile was hauntingly absent. Her eyes bore into me, flooded with sorrow. "Help me," she whispered, the words echoing painfully in the silence. Before I could process her plea, the lights flickered back on. She vanished, leaving only a void where she had stood. I stumbled back, almost crashing into the wall. My heartbeat rang in my ears. What had just happened? Was I losing my mind? I steadied myself and peered down the hallway. Whatever secrets the hospital held were now more urgent than ever. The faces wanted something from me, and I was determined to find out what. I stumbled into the lounge, my mind racing. The cries for help echoed in my memory, but they weren't just in my head. The woman needed assistance, and I had no idea how to give it. I rubbed my temples, battling the tension building within me. I needed to talk to someone, but who would believe me? I decided to check the records in the office, hoping to find something about the woman. The flickering fluorescent lights added to my anxiety, but I pushed through. As I sat at the desk, a computer screen brightened before me. I began typing her description into the patient files. I was deep in thought when a shadow crossed the doorway. I looked up to see a fellow nurse, Leslie, standing there. I forced a smile, but the worry must have been evident. "What is going on?" she asked, concern etched on her face. "I just had a strange experience. The patient in room 204, she was gone, but I've seen her picture in the lounge," I stammered, trying to convey my fears clearly. Leslie's brows furrowed. "You think she is still here? That can't be right. Maybe you need to take a break. These night shifts can mess with your head." But her words fell flat. I couldn't let this go. I insisted, "No, really. I'm sure she was real. You've got to help me figure this out." Leslie paced the room, thinking. "All right. Let us take a look. Maybe there is something on file." Her voice continued, but my focus shifted to the report hanging by the desk. As she kneaded her temples, I caught sight of the name, Marie Langston. My heart raced. That was the name of the woman in the portrait. "Wait," I interrupted, pointing at the report. "That is her. Marie Langston. What does it say?" Leslie approached, her eyes scanning the paper. "She was admitted 6 months ago." But her voice trailed off. "She passed away a month later. It says she had a rare illness." I felt the floor sway beneath me. The thoughts rushed in like a tidal wave. The empty bed, the cold presence. My mind spun with more questions than answers. But why did I see her? Before Leslie could answer, the lights flickered violently again, sending a chill through the room. I clutched the desk, eyes darting around. It was happening again. The whispers rose, a frantic chorus in the air. "Did you hear that?" I whispered, my voice a mere tremor as an unseen force enveloped us. Leslie glanced around, panic flashing in her eyes. Then it happened. The papers on the desk began to flutter wildly, lifting like leaves caught in a storm. I stumbled back, my heart pounding in my ears. "Help me," came that same whisper, louder this time, echoing off the walls. Leslie grabbed my arm. "We need to get out of here." She yanked me toward the door, but I was rooted in place, staring at the computer screen. Then I saw it. A second name, written in small print beneath Marie's: Daniel Langston. I realized what I had to do. "No. We can't leave. I need to find out who he is." Before I could fully process my own words, Leslie dragged me out into the hallway. The whispers intensified, drowning out all other sounds as I fought against her grip. The air crackled with tension as we rushed down the corridor. I had to understand. I had to uncover the mysteries behind the faces that haunted me. I stumbled into the hallway, dragging my feet as Leslie pulled me forward. The faint whispers were like claws wrapping around me, making it hard to breathe. "We need to go now," she insisted, her voice tense. I glanced back toward the office. I couldn't just leave this behind. "I have to find out about Daniel Langston," I pleaded, my mind racing. "He has to be connected." Leslie stopped, her expression conflicted. "Okay, but we do this fast. I'll help you, but we're not staying up here much longer." Together, we rushed back to the office. My fingers trembled as I clicked the mouse, pulling up the records. I typed Daniel Langston into the search bar, hoping for anything that could explain the connection. The screen filled with data, and my heart sank. The same disease had taken him. Daniel Langston had been admitted right after Marie, just weeks apart. What were the odds? "Look," I said, pointing to his history, "he died of the same illness a month after Marie. This isn't a coincidence." Leslie leaned closer, reading over my shoulder. "But why would they both be at this hospital? There's got to be a connection." Her tone lightened for a split second, but the heaviness returned as the whispers gained strength again, creeping into our thoughts. Every instinct pushed me to dig deeper. I continued scrolling, consumed by the gravity of this situation, but the words on the screen began to blur. "Leslie, I think they're trying to tell me something," I whispered, a sense of urgency rising within me. Little did I know, the room started to chill. Suddenly, the lights flickered once more, dimming until they nearly extinguished. My heart raced, straining against my chest. "This isn't happening," I murmured, fighting the rising panic. Then, everything went dark. The computer screen shut down with a low hum, plunging us into shadows. I could feel the weight of something in the air, a presence wrapping around me like a thick fog. "Get the flashlight," I told Leslie, my voice barely above a whisper. She fumbled in her pocket, pulling out her phone. The screen cast a weak glow, and I could see fear painted across her face. "What now?" "Marie and Daniel. They need help," I replied, my uncertainty clawing at the edges of my mind. I could almost feel their desperation woven into the fabric of the hospital. "But how? What do they want?" As I stood there, frozen, I felt an icy breeze brush past me. A vision flashed in my mind: green fields, laughter, and then nothing but darkness. Someone was waiting for me, pulling me down, telling me to look further. Then I saw the name again: Daniel Langston, but underneath it, a date, July 14th, "Wait!" I exclaimed, piecing the fragments together. "That's today. It's been 1 year since they both died." Leslie's eyes widened, panic now coursing through her. "What does that even mean?" Her voice faltered as shadows danced along the walls. Before I could respond, the faintest sound echoed in the silence: a soft voice, different from the whispers, hauntingly familiar. "Help us find peace." Then the power surged back to life. The lights flickered back on, illuminating the office. Yet, it was too late. I knew something was coming. The ground seemed to quake under my feet. "Leslie," I said quietly, my heart pounding like a drum. "I think they want us to finish what they started." Just then, the door burst open. A figure stood silhouetted against the hallway lights, blocking our escape. My breath caught in my throat. What lay ahead was becoming increasingly dangerous. I took a step forward as my determination ignited. "We're going to find out what happened to you, Marie and Daniel. I promise." The figure shifted, and I realized we were far from alone. The figure stepped into the light, revealing a hospital security guard. Relief washed over me for a split second, quickly replaced by confusion. "What are you two doing up here?" he demanded, his brow furrowed with concern. His voice was sharp, cutting through the remnants of fear in the air. "We're investigating," Leslie replied hesitantly, glancing at me as if searching for support. "Something south off about this place. We think there's a connection between two patients." Daniel Langston and Marie the guard eyed us skeptically. "You shouldn't be here after hours. There's a lot of strange activity at this hospital, especially around this time." His gaze shifted as if he sensed the heaviness lingering in the room. "It's not just patients that roam these halls." Leslie and I exchanged glances. He spoke like he knew something, and my curiosity ignited again. "What do you mean? What have you seen?" I asked. "Things happen here. Some staff have reported voices and shadows. People have said they felt watched," he admitted, lowering his voice as if afraid of being overheard. "I've seen it myself. And not just whispers, tormented souls, trying to reach out. You shouldn't dig into things you don't understand." My heart pounded. Could it be possible that Daniel and Marie weren't just victims but were somehow trapped here? "But they need help. They want us to find out what happened to them," I insisted, desperation seeping into my tone. "Sometimes letting go is the only way to find peace," the guard stated, his face resolute. "But you two are risking everything. I can't let you stay any longer." He turned to leave, and I felt a surge of panic. "Please. We need to find their records. There has to be something more, something that tells us why they died." The guard paused, glancing back at us, his eyes narrowing. "You want to like what you find." With that, he disappeared down the hallway, leaving us with just the glow of Leslie's phone and the growing darkness around us. "What do we do now?" she asked, her voice trembling. I walked back towards the desk, adrenaline coursing through me. "We find those records," I said firmly. He wouldn't have warned us if it didn't mean something. As I sat back down at the computer, I navigated to the files again, searching for anything on that date, July 14th. My fingers flew over the keys, but the tension in the air thickened, and I could feel the whispers come back, as if urging me on. "Come on," I muttered, the screen still blanking on nothing of significance. Then suddenly it happened. A single document opened, reading research study, unsanctioned trials. My breath caught. This wasn't just about their deaths. I glanced at Leslie, who was staring wide-eyed at the screen. "This is it," I whispered. But then, just as quickly as the document appeared, it flickered and vanished. Panic shot through me. "No, no. Bring it back," I cried, fumbling the mouse. Before I could react, the lights flickered violently, plunging us into a near-total blackout. The air felt charged, electric. I heard a soft cry, almost like a wail echoing through the office, chilling my bones. "Did you hear that?" Leslie exclaimed, inching closer to me. "That's definitely not the guard," I muttered, feeling the urgency surge again. Then, like a cruel twist of fate, the door slammed shut, locking us inside. Something was not finished with us yet. We weren't going anywhere until we found the truth. The room seemed to shrink around us as the door slammed, pinning me against the desk. Leslie gasped beside me, her eyes wide and reflecting the dim light from her phone. What do we do? We can't just sit here. My heart raced. I glanced at the locked door. We have to get out of here, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. But first, we have to find the document. It could tell us what we need to know. Suddenly, I heard something rustle behind us. I swung around, and my stomach dropped. The shadows in the corners of the room seemed to shift, growing darker and more oppressive. I reached for the mouse again, hoping to will the document back on the screen, but the computer was now frozen. Can you believe this? I whispered to Leslie. The guard warned us. Something is definitely off. She shivered, clutching her phone like a lifeline. What if we really shouldn't have come here? What if those things he talked about they're real? Stop it. I snapped, fear bubbling to the surface. We can't let this place break us. We need to stay focused. I took a deep breath, forcing my mind back on track. Let us try the cabinet next to the desk. There might be physical records. Leslie nodded, and we both moved toward the small cabinet. The shadows still danced at the edges of the room, but I pushed down my fear, willing myself to be brave. I yanked the cabinet open, and papers spilled out, littering the floor. I focused on sifting through them, praying for a clue. As I flipped through one file after another, something caught my eye. A rusty old binder sat in the back, half hidden beneath a pile of crumpled papers. When I tugged it free, a shiver ran down my spine. It was marked with the hospital's logo but looked decades old. Jack, what is that? Leslie asked, peering over my shoulder. Not sure. It looks like it could be archives. I opened the binder, and a wave of stale air rushed out, almost knocking me back. Inside were photographs, black and white images of patients, their faces obscured or ghostly, and detailed notes about various experiments. Daniel Marie, I murmured, my fingers trembling over a page where their names were scribbled down. The notes mentioned something about Project Echo and assisted spirit release. My stomach churned. This was worse than I had imagined. Jack, look. Leslie gasped, pointing at the last page. It talks about a procedure they conducted near that date. It says it was involuntary. Loud thuds echoed outside the door. Panic rose within me again. Someone's coming. We can't let them find us like this. We hurriedly stacked the papers, hoping to find a way out before we would be caught. As I pushed the binder into my backpack, my eyes fell on a small slip of paper tucked in between the pages. For salvation, give of yourself, it read, but the words felt like a curse more than a blessing. Did you hear that? Leslie whispered, her voice trembling. Before I could respond, the door rattled violently, every thud hammering in time with my racing heart. I turned in horror as the shadows in the corners began to swirl toward us. Then everything went dark. The lights flickered back to life, but we weren't alone anymore. An icy breeze swept through the room, and standing by the door, a figure loomed, shrouded in darkness. I realized right then that we were not meant to leave this hospital without answering a question that might lead to our destruction. I blinked, trying to adjust to the sudden light. The figure by the door appeared almost translucent, like a ghost caught between worlds. My breath caught in my throat. Leslie, I whispered, tugging her arm. We have to move. Now. But Leslie didn't budge. She stared, wide-eyed and frozen. What is that? She breathed, her voice shaking. I had no answer. The figure shifted, its edges blurring. It took a step forward, and my instincts kicked in. I grabbed Leslie's hand and pulled her with me, darting toward the side window. If we could just break out, if we could stop. A voice echoed, deep and hollow. It echoed around the room, shaking me to the core. I hesitated. How was it possible for it to speak? My heart raced, and I turned back, realizing that the figure was now close enough that I could make out its features or lack thereof. Its face was an empty void, as though all humanity had been stripped away. "Jack, we can't leave," Leslie whispered, her grip turning vice-like around my wrist. I shook my head, forcing more determination into my voice. "We can't stay. It's not safe." I pushed the window open and glanced outside. The ground was a good 10 feet below, but I could see old vines creeping up the side of the building. "Maybe we could climb down." "Don't you dare." The voice rang out again, reverberating against the walls like a mournful dirge. "You must know the truth first." Leslie's eyes switched back from the ghost to me, desperation flooding her expression. "What truth?" she asked, trembling. The figure stepped forward again, this time revealing a skeletal hand extending toward us, fingers crooked like old tree branches. "You will know the fate of those who came before you." I felt a shift inside me as dread mixed with curiosity. What happened to the others? I glanced at Leslie, who looked bewildered. "We don't have time for this. We need to go." But something held me in place. I couldn't tear my eyes away from that ghastly figure, even as it filled me with dread. The air grew colder, wrapping around me like frost. "Answer one question," it said, its voice a chilling breeze. "Are you willing to sacrifice everything for knowledge?" A wave of confusion washed over me. "What kind of question is that?" I shot back, unsure of where this was going. Suddenly, the walls seemed to close in. Papers flew from the scattered pile on the floor, swirling in the air like leaves in a storm. My thoughts raced. I needed a plan. I couldn't let this thing take over my mind. "Jack!" Leslie screamed, pulling me back as the window began to rattle in its frame, shaking as if something pushed against it from the outside. Then, I saw a glint of metal beneath one of the papers. My heartbeat quickened. "The document. We need the document." The figure lashed out, its mouth opening as if to scream. I dove for the old binder, fingers trembling as I fished it out from the chaos. It felt warm despite the cold waves radiating from the spirit. "Stop!" I yelled, holding the binder like a shield. "I'll answer your question. Just let us go." The figure froze, its energy flickering like a candle. But did I really know what I was signing up for? One answer could unlock horrors I wasn't prepared to face. Then the shadows swelled, and the answer felt closer than ever, ready to escape my lips. The moment my fingers wrapped around the binder, the atmosphere shifted. It felt solid in my hands, yet the chilling presence of the figure made it hard to focus. I stared, waiting for the spirit to react. For a heartbeat, time froze. "Jack, please." Leslie's voice cut through the tension, desperate and pleading. I could see the fear etched on her face, but the curiosity inside me was growing louder. What truth did this thing hold? "Your choice," the figure hissed, its voice like ice scraping against metal. "Speak the words, and you shall know." I hesitated. "You're saying if I answer, we get the truth and we can leave?" "Yes," it replied, its hollow eyes drawing me in. I could sense a promise behind the words, one that could answer questions but might also dig too deep. I glanced at Leslie, fear flickering across her face. "What if we don't like what we learn?" "Knowledge holds power," the figure said, its skeletal hand gesturing toward the cluttered table. "But ignorance is a chain that binds." My heart hammered. I had to choose. I glanced at the binder, suddenly drawn to the faded text on its cover. It was filled with records, names, dates, incidents. A piece of history wrapped in mundane paper. Who were the people listed? What tragedies did they endure? "Do it," Leslie urged. "Answer it so we can get out of here." Taking a deep breath, I held the binder tightly. "Fine. I'm willing to sacrifice everything for knowledge. What do I need to know?" In an instant, the air shifted dramatically. The shadows warped and twisted, almost dancing as the figure's form expanded and seemed to absorb the very night around it. An eerie wind spiraled through the room, forcing me to shield my eyes. Then a vision struck me. I saw fragments of the past, flickering images of the hospital filled with people in anguish. Faces twisted in fear, echoes of desperate cries. I saw hazy forms in sterile rooms, patients and doctors haunted by something unseen. Those who sought answers were consumed, the figure intoned, its voice echoing through my mind like a warning. You seek knowledge, but at what cost? Suddenly, a searing pain shot through my temples, blurring the visions. I gasped, crumbling to the ground. Stop. I can't bear this. Leslie rushed to my side, panic brewing in her eyes. Jack. What's happening? But the figure loomed, its presence growing heavier. The cycle repeats, and you stand at the brink. Choices made below will carry weight above. In that moment of clarity, it hit me. The stories were linked to the very place we stood, a cycle of deaths and unanswered questions. Names in the binder were people who once walked those very halls. Before I could shift from the ground, the shadows began to converge again, pulling away the light. Panic surged through me. We need to go, Leslie. Now. As the shadows writhed and the ghost's face twisted in a mixture of compassion and warning, I saw a choice, one that pressed against my conscience like a vice. The truth was there to grasp, but at what price? Would we leave knowing more or haunt the halls like those before us? And then, just as quickly as it began, everything went dark once more, plunging us into uncertainty. I gasped, my eyes darting around in the sudden darkness. I could hardly breathe, not knowing if we were still in the same place or somewhere entirely different. I turned my head to find Leslie, but panic tightened my throat. Leslie? Right here, she said, her voice trembling. I could barely see her, but I felt the warmth of her hand clutching mine. What just happened? I don't know, I admitted. But I think we've stirred something we're not ready for. The air felt thick, and a chill swept over us. I felt the figures returning, swirling like dark smoke around the edges of my vision. Their whispers merged into a singular voice that was almost familiar, like the echoes of those lives lost. The truth demands to be unveiled. My heart raced, and I began to look for an escape. There had to be a way out, a way to shake this nightmare off before it consumed us. I spotted the door we had entered through, a faint outline against a wall of shadows. We have to move. Now. I yanked Leslie with me, but as we rushed toward the door, something stopped us dead in our tracks. A figure emerged from the shadows, brandishing a grotesque smile, a stark contrast to the void surrounding it. It looked almost human but was unnaturally distorted, like a reflection in broken glass. Why do you flee? It crooned, its voice dripping with mockery. You're already part of the story. Leslie shuddered. What's happening? Jack. I'm not sure, but we can't listen to it. I yelled, forcing myself to think. The binder still clutched in my other hand. What did it mean? This was a test, another piece of knowledge hidden in the depths of terror. The figure leaned closer, its hollow gaze sending shivers down my spine. Do you truly wish to understand? Many have tried before you. Something clicked. My mind raced back to the images from the vision, the hospital, the people. The stories, they're not just in this binder. They're in this place. I turned to Leslie. They're asking for us to acknowledge them. But at what cost? Leslie said, fear mingling with anger. We can't let it draw us in. We can't ignore it either. I took a shaky breath, feeling the weight of the binder in my grip. This could be our way to escape, or perhaps just another trap. Listen, I think if we can connect the dots. The figure laughed, a sound so hollow it echoed painfully in my ears. Connect the dots? You think that'll save you? Without thinking, I thrust the binder at the figure. If you want it, then you take it. Just let us go. For a split second, everything stopped. The shadow wavered, and then everything spiraled into chaos. The room shifted and morphed, pulling us toward a flickering light in the distance. I felt the binders slip from my grasp, scattering across the ground as the shadows thrashed around us. Then, as quickly as the chaos began, the bright light swallowed us whole. I stumbled, and we landed on a cold floor. I blinked, trying to make sense of what had just happened. I pushed my hands under me and forced my body upright. We were in a hallway. Not the one we were just in. This looked different, darker, older. And we were not alone. Jack, what is this place? Leslie's voice trembled as she grabbed my arm. That S when I saw it. A door at the end of the hallway had a nameplate, one that sent a chill down my spine. It read Dr. Hargrove, room 401. I turned to Leslie, and fear washed over us both as we realized we were in the heart of whatever darkness had enshrined this hospital. We need to figure out what happened here. But as I positioned myself to run, the door swung open, and a figure emerged, a doctor in a tattered white coat, eyes wide with anticipation, and a smile that sent a jolt of dread coursing through me. "Ah, the curious ones," he said. "I've been expecting you." Now, there was no turning back. My heart raced as the doctor stepped into the dim light, his smile widening, a mix of confusion and excitement flickering in his eyes. "You've come to uncover the truth, haven't you?" he asked, his voice slithering through the air like a vine rooting itself deep. I could feel the weight of the shadows closing in around us, pushing me toward a decision I knew I couldn't escape. Leslie squeezed my arm, her breath shaky. "What truth?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "Ah, the innocence of youth," he chuckled, tilting his head as if savoring our apprehension. "All those souls lost because they sought to question the unknown. And yet, here you are, stepping into the very heart of it." I forced myself to take a step back. "You know them, don't you? Marie and Daniel?" The doctor's eyes lit up. "Yes, yes." They were quite the subjects, eager participants in something greater than themselves. Such potential wasted, his voice trailed off, wrapped in nostalgia. "But you hold the key to their release. Are you willing to sacrifice for their peace?" "Release?" I echoed, all too aware of the whispers gathering in my mind, a cacophony urging me closer to the truth. "Yes. To free them, you must offer what they could not. Their stories need to be told." I felt Leslie pull slightly, her anxiety evident. "Jack, we should just leave now. This isn't worth it." But something gnawed at me, an insatiable curiosity intertwined with dread. I thought of those faces from the photographs, felt the weight of their stories pressing down on my heart. Were they bound to this hospital, trapped by unknowable ties? "What do you want from us?" I asked, my voice steadying as I faced the daunting figure before us. "Your willingness to engage," he smiled, his expression grotesquely reminiscent of a predatory delight. "Dare to know their truth, further their legacies even from beyond. To discover what truly binds souls to this realm." My chest tightened, this was not just an investigation anymore. I smelled the bitterness of fear mixed with seduction. "What are you offering in return?" "Salvation, wisdom, freedom." His laughter sent tremors down my spine. "All I ask is that you step into the void they dare not tread. Feel what they felt, understand their anguish." Every fiber in my body screamed at me to flee. Yet curiosity anchored me. Faces flickered in my vision, hopeless, trapped, searching. I turned to Leslie. "What if we could help them? By becoming one of them?" She interjected, fear coloring her voice. "You can't mean that." But he leaned closer, shadows dancing in his gaze. "The cycle persists. Confront it. Only through sacrifice can you end their torment." The air crackled with tension, begging me toward a choice. What did it mean to sacrifice? Would I be abandoning my own existence for theirs? And what if I delved deeper, discovering something I wished I hadn't? I will do it. I heard myself say, voice trembling with a mix of fear and resolve. Jack! Leslie cried, but a heaviness swept over the room, binding us to the reality of my choice. The doctor nodded, satisfied. Breathe, let your essence intertwine with the past. Before I could react, the shadows enveloped my vision, pulling me into the depths, drowning me in darkness. I gasped, suddenly floating through time, moments shifting around me like fragments of broken glass. I was in the hospital, but it was alive with activity. I could see Marie and Daniel both vibrant and unaware of their fate. Voices echoed in the hallways, whispers of life before despair seeped in. But in every corner of the brightness was an undercurrent of something macabre, a mist settling like fog, consuming them slowly. Shivers rolled down my spine as I saw the interventions that stole their lives, experiments dolloped on the innocent, an insatiable quest for knowledge that cost them their very essence. My heart raced as whirring machines whirled in the background, sounds of anguish bubbling up. I was trapped in their memories, feeling the weight of their collective pain. Their stories buried deep, waiting for an echo in the void. Then, just as suddenly, a bright light enveloped me again. I blinked, gasping for breath as I returned to the room, my vision spinning. The doctor stood before me, still grinning. You see? Knowledge and sacrifice are intertwined. What have I done? I gasped, panic clawing at my throat. The shadows behind him seemed to pulse, eager and alive. Nothing yet. He crooned. You have tasted the truth but not yet acted upon it. Their legacies depend on you now. The weight of it hit me, gnawing through any resolve. I felt the sorrow of the past rising around me, the whispers urging me to complete what I had begun. Jack! Leslie's voice broke through a haze of confusion. Let us leave. Now. But somehow, I felt an undeniable compulsion to stay. They were lost souls, crying out for help, entangled in this hospital, forever unanswered. I felt the urge to free them, to find some way to end the cycle. Yet the cost haunted me. Would our existence be tethered to their tragic narrative, even as we sought to untangle the secrets? What do we do? I asked, fear clawing my insides as the shadows seemed to snake closer, urging me onward. Only you can decide, the doctor mused, voice dripping with malice and thrill. Will you echo their suffering or rise beyond? The choice lay before me, a precipice between freedom and eternal prison, questions echoing into the void with no clear answers.